Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Cocktail Hour. I am Meg.
And I'm Nikki. If you're a wedding vendor headed to a wedding this weekend, may the odds ever be in your favor. And if you have a double or triple header, this episode is dedicated to you.
Yes. Do you have triple headers ever?
No.
I wouldn't recommend. I love my couples, but it does get
I've
tough.
done it a few times. No,
Yeah, not a
thanks.
fan. Okay, today we have a sister-in-law who wasn't welcome at a wedding and frustration around why planners stop referring other vendors, specifically like photographers and videographers. I was very intrigued by this, so I wanted to hear your thoughts because I get it from both perspectives. But anyways, you just got back from Chicago. Hit us with how
Yeah,
that was.
we'll do a little recap. I luckily got to go to Chicago and see some of my besties. It was literally the best weekend. Didn't leave the house on Saturday. Sat there all day and just hung out, did girly things, and it was the best. Got gelato and the best chicken Caesar salad I've ever had, and sushi. Basically, just a weekend of eating and chilling with the girls.
Nice.
But yeah, currently I'm really also obsessed with Yellow Jackets. If
Mm-hmm.
anybody's seen that, have you seen it?
Mm-mm. I see
It's
it every time I open Netflix. Yeah.
Netflix. It's a Showtime show, but it's on Netflix now. And I was not into it for the longest time, but everybody in my household was watching it. So I finally started it, and I will say it is worth the watch. Like,
Can you give me like a synopsis of what the show's about?
yeah, basically it's about this girls' high school soccer team who is like traveling to nationals for a tournament. And one of the girls is wealthy, and so her dad rents or like gets a PJ for the team to travel to nationals, and they end up being in a big plane crash. And so then it's essentially flashbacks of like the story goes from highlighting like the women and their lives today as
Mm-hmm.
like 50-year-old adults, women, and then the flashing back to like their time
That sounds interesting,
in
actually.
the wilderness
Yeah.
with like the people who survived, what they had to do. And then it takes a dark turn, and there's like this twist and this aspect of like there's things that they're not talking about in their
Yeah.
adulthood of what happened there, but there's a bunch of rumors and a bunch of speculation in the tabloids of like what these girls went through or like what they did in their
Yeah.
time out in the woods. Because there was evidence found of them being, they, I don't want to ruin it, but they essentially become like a tribe and do like, it gets like dark
Wow.
and they, yeah.
I assumed it was going to be like, am I thinking of Jeffrey Dahmer? The family that like walked through the mountains and had to eat each other. I can't remember who those
You're
people
thinking
were.
of, yeah, I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
So I assumed that's where this was going. I did not assume that they
It's
were
pretty
like,
sim I mean, it's
yeah.
along those lines, but
But I didn't think that they were like, they became a tribe. But essentially, to survive, you gotta do what you gotta do.
yeah, but it's really interesting. So, highly
Hmm.
recommend also watching the Ruby Frankie story. Have you heard about that? That was a TikTok mom. She was like all over TikTok and all over YouTube. She was like a big
Mm-hmm.
YouTuber. Oh my God, it's so traumatic.
Is it?
Basically, okay, this is on Hulu. It's called like The Devil in the Family or something like that. The Rise and Fall of Ruby Frankie. But basically, it's this Mormon mom with 6 kids out in Utah,
Okay.
and they are this family, and they're called like the 8-passenger van or something because there's 6 kids, mom and dad, and everything starts very fine, like a fun family vlogging channel.
Yeah.
But she turns, you can tell she has mental illness to begin with, but it gets way worse when she essentially is introduced into this other like Mormon woman she meets who has her own kind of like cult
Mm-hmm.
essentially. And this other woman basically links up with this mom of 8, and it's the craziest story I've ever seen, but trigger warning, lots of child abuse,
Mm.
lots of like red flag cult stuff. And the other woman's name is Jodi Hildebrandt, and she's a horrible human being. She's a narcissistic psychopath. But if you're into documentaries, highly recommend. Really good. Craig and I finished it last night. He didn't even watch the first episode with me. I
Yeah.
watched it in Chicago with my friends, and I was about halfway through the second episode, and we just started watching it, and he got sucked in so fast. He was like, don't start it over. Like, it's fine. I'll just start from where you are.
Yeah.
Sucked in. Like, he was locked into the TV with me and was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. And when I said it gets worse, he was like, how can it get any worse?
Yeah.
And it gets really bad. So just trigger warning on that. But yeah, also if you are on TikTok and you're seeing like all of the fashion show stuff, well, first of all, the Oscars were on last night.
I did everything I could to avoid any single spoilers because I needed
I
to
didn't watch
work.
it.
So I don't know who any of the winners are.
I don't know either.
And I didn't want to look at. I want to see them open the envelope, so I'm going to rewatch it.
To be honest, I don't care about it
Oh,
at all.
do.
What I do care about is the after show. I think Hollywood is fucked. Like, I think
Yeah.
celebrities and all of the things are unwell, but the Giggly Squad girls were hosting the Vanity Fair after party. So I
Yeah.
did watch some of that. It did start at 11 p.m., so I did not watch it live. I just watched some recaps because I was
Yeah.
sleeping. But it was so good. Like, so proud of our after show podcast host, Paige and Hannah girls. Literally listened to that podcast the whole way there
After
and home.
episode, yeah.
And realized my friend and I, while we were driving home from Chicago yesterday, were like, they're literally talking about everything we talked about this weekend. Conversations
Oh,
we
yeah.
legitimately had amongst ourselves just as girls. I'm like, that's why I love this podcast. And lastly, the last thing that I want to highlight is the D Squared fashion show. Doechii and JT, which when I told Meg this, she goes, Justin Timberlake?
Yeah.
No, JT from City Girls, the rapper.
Okay. Did not know.
They performed and it was incredible.
Yeah.
Go watch it back. It's all over TikTok right now.
I've seen some clips. I mean, Doechii, in my eyes, does no wrong, but that, like, I did not
It
watch
was
the full
so good.
performance.
So good.
I'm going to have to check it out.
Loved it. How about you? What did you do this weekend?
Honestly, weekend, not a whole lot. Just this week was filled. I didn't shoot at all. I just had consultations, finally got my nails done. I don't know about you, but sometimes I look down and I go, Jesus Christ, like I really let these go. If I get to a point where if I hit my nail and it breaks on something because it's too long, I'm like, yeah, we gotta wrap this up.
That's what happened to me.
Otherwise, right? Then I know. I'm doing the cat eye a lot more.
Yeah, I think it's cute though.
I do too. It's just simple and it's easier to just do a color and get the fuck out of there.
I know.
But I will say who I'm going to now does this in like 45 minutes to an hour, whereas before I was sitting for 3
That's
hours.
actually sick. I'm in and out of my nail girl at 40 minutes.
Yeah.
No matter what.
3 hours. I was like, I really didn't look forward to getting my nails done because I was
That's
like,
crazy.
this is a time commitment. Yeah. Other than that, I spent this week, I am actually creating some styled shoots, which if you know me personally, you know that I fucking hate styled shoots. Like I don't like creating them. I don't love being a part of them unless I have some hand in the vision of them or I'm working with a planner who's I'm close with and I kind of like can trust their vision. Otherwise, I don't love shooting in groups of people. Most of the time, like I like it to be intimate, but I have great planning friends and great venue friends who are just looking to, I don't know, kind of bring some inspo from the West Coast, a lot of things that we're seeing. So we're trying to create some things, and that is a lot more work than I thought it would be. Otherwise, I just worked on this office. I organized my entire gear closet, and I even did a poll on Instagram to see if people could guess how much.
People guessing 25 SD cards, 30 SD cards. I was like, are you insane?
Also, I was like, do you reuse these SD cards? Because me, I do not reuse an SD card through an entire wedding season. So I will, in my camera, it has 2. I take one of them, it goes into a drawer for the rest of the year. And then the other one, of course, I'll format and reuse. But I always keep one SD card for a year just in case, I lose an SSD, which fingers crossed won't ever happen again. But other than that, that's really all I did. I had a very boring week.
Okay.
But
that's okay. They come and they go. It's better to have these boring weeks before busy season and to just really soak it in.
So May, literally, right the first week of May, you and I are driving down to Texas. I then get back.
We're driving back from Texas. We leave, right? The 30th?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So we're going to Texas, drive back from Texas, but that'll be like May
3rd.
3rd. And then I get home. I have a wedding May 10th in Minnesota, so that very next week. And then I have to go down to Georgia for a shoot on May 13th, so 3 days later. And then I have to come
What is
back.
that? Oh, the Atlanta style
Yeah,
shoot.
the Atlanta
Okay.
shoot. And then I come back. I have another wedding in Minneapolis. And then Adam and I drive to
Oh my
Chicago
God, that'll be so
for
fun.
Beyonce. And then I have 2 weddings every weekend for the next couple weeks. And it's just, once May hits, it's going to be one of those things where it's like adrenaline is
I
purely getting
know.
me through. So
My
right
f-
now we're chilling.
my friend invited me to Vegas the weekend of May 17th, and I have a
Do
freaking
it.
wedding on the 17th. Nothing else. That's my birthday weekend too.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
try not to take weddings on my birthday weekend. And then, of course, anytime an opportunity is presented, I'm like, sure, why not?
Yeah.
And I'm like, could have gone to Vegas,
Yeah,
but
it
it's
is
okay.
hard, and I don't like to be that photographer who's like, woe is me.
It
But
is really hard.
it is really hard because we are put in positions where we either need to make a decision to pay our bills or to spend time with our loved ones. And so you think about, I almost am happy that we live in Minnesota and that our wedding season is,
Yep,
9 months
agreed.
instead of 12, because then we have a bit of an excuse for a couple months off. But every single weekend for the majority of the year, while your friends and family are out doing things, we are working because that's how we pay our bills. So it's like people go, oh, it's so nice, Monday through Thursday, you're just kind of like going to Target, going to the gym, like doing your own thing. Number
No,
one, we're
no,
doing projects
no,
always.
no,
But two,
no.
the fun things like going to a Twins game, going like to whatever during the
Going to the
summer, like,
cabin for the
yeah, we are
weekend.
not doing that with our friends
That
and
doesn't
family.
exist in
Yeah.
our universe.
But on the flip side, I did cry. I cry a lot about many things, but I did cry. Adam and I were talking about our future and like what we'd love to do when we retire. And he was like, he's 10 years older, and you get this, like having a significant other who's very much older, sorry, but they're going to retire before us. Also, our job is a little bit more flexible. And
Yeah.
I go, well, let's say if he and I were talking about having little mini leases kind of
Mhm.
throughout Europe, like the pets have passed away, he's retired, so let's just like go to Spain and live there for 3 months and go blah blah blah. And I go, I could still be a photographer.
Yeah.
And then we got to talking about how though one day there will be a time where I never pick up a camera again. Like my hands maybe won't even be able to hold a camera. The tears I shed thinking about that, like such a big piece of you as a human, and you physically can't do it anymore. And I was just like, I don't want to compare us to like Olympic athletes or anything.
A surgeon.
Yes,
A heart
someone big.
surgeon.
But I was just like, that's fucking sad to think about the day that we just stop taking photographs, not even professionally, but personally.
No, I was gonna say as a profession, sure, but like I see old ass people with little point and shoots all the time.
I
Like you don't have to
know.
let your hobby or your passion or your love for something die just because your hands hurt a little.
I just feel like I crack my fingers and my wrists a lot. I really worry about what I'm going to look like
That's
as
a myth.
I don't know. It scares me. I,
Craig thinks the same thing though. He's like, oh, you're always popping your
yeah.
knuckles. And I'm like, it's literally a myth. Like my grandpa never cracked a knuckle a day in his life. You should see his hands. He looks decrepit. Like,
So what you're just saying in general is like when you get old, your hands are going to be
yes,
fucked.
it is literally just a normal progression of how life moves. I can't see my camera, so I can't see if it's recording or not. And I always just want to make sure.
That's fair.
And it is.
She good.
Anyway, we can hop into the
Let's
story.
do it.
Okay. Am I the asshole for not wanting my future mother-in-law to help with our wedding? My future mother-in-law and I have a rocky history of not getting along. She has spent the last 8 years making comments and trying to make my fiance and I break up. Red flag. We recently booked our wedding venue and asked my future mother-in-law for a list of addresses for wedding invites. She didn't provide any addresses, but went on a rant about wanting to pay for her fair share of things. She mentioned wanting to split the cost of the photographer with us so that she's comfortable asking for what she wants. This normally would be nice and not a big deal, but she is very controlling and 100% would prioritize pictures of her family and try to exclude me, the bride. She also said they would like to pay for the rehearsal dinner. This came with another list of demands. She then went on to try to explain all of the details of planning a wedding to us as if we already haven't been doing it for months. I want to tell her to take her money elsewhere because I refuse to let her hold it over our heads. I was going to do all of the traditional things for the groom's side of the family and obviously involve them in the wedding. But after receiving her list of demands and her seemingly not caring about what we want, I don't want to involve her at all because this is definitely just the beginning of all of the things that are to come. Edit to add, forgot to mention that my fiance is the one doing all of the communicating with her. He has my back and agrees with not involving her, but he takes a much softer approach with his mom, whereas I just want to tell her to F off. We are having a hard time trying to balance completely cutting her off and just keeping her subdued. We have a good relationship with other family members on his side, so going no contact and cutting her out would be difficult. First of all, I don't think you need to go no contact with his mom and cut her
Yeah.
out completely. I think you need to have a very stern conversation and say, these are our boundaries and we're actually not involving anybody.
Yeah.
Like, this is our wedding. My significant other and I are planning, and this is what we're doing. I think when people leave it open to saying, like, here's what we're doing, what do you think? That leaves a window of opportunity for people to give so many opinions and to say X, Y, and Z. Whereas if you say, this is what we're doing,
Yeah.
this is actually what we have already secured and what we're moving forward with. We're not changing anything. We're not making any adjustments based on what people want. This is our plan, and we're really happy with it.
Yeah. And I gotta be honest, do not take money from anybody.
No.
If it comes with even 1%
Yeah.
stipulation, it is not worth it.
No.
And especially from a photography perspective, when I get somewhere and I have a parent or I have whatever, now it's different if they're like, "Oh, can you grab a quick family photo?"
That's
and it's one
different.
and done, like
Of
sure.
course.
But
Happy to.
if they're walking you around, trying to get photos of what they want instead of what the couple wants or getting photos of the couple, I am irritated as your
Yeah.
vendor. And I know you're irritated as the couple who is paying me all of this money to capture your wedding day. But like you said, when planning a wedding, if you can help it, don't involve anybody whose opinion you would not love.
Right.
Don't even talk to them about it.
I think family can be hard, but at the end of the day, it's your wedding and you got to do what you want to do. Like, I know you're not the asshole. Obviously, I think these situations where it's like, I feel like I haven't come across an am I the asshole yet, where it's not a very obvious and blatant, like,
Yeah.
you either are the asshole or you're not the asshole. And this is another blatant, like, you're not the asshole. And I can understand as a bride feeling uncomfortable or feeling nervous about having to be in a situation where your future mother in law is not going to be involved to the level that she thinks she is. But just know that to everyone else, the blatant answer is you are not the asshole.
Yeah.
Like, it's truly, you're in a position where your husband is on your side, he's backing you. You guys sound like you have the financial means to be able to take care of things,
Yeah.
and you know what you want. You have set yourself up to be in such a good position to say, hey, at this time, we appreciate your feedback. However, we are not welcoming it anymore. We're not looking for that. We know exactly what we want, and we're choosing to move on with that and enjoy our day as best as you can. And you can almost shape it in a way of saying, like, we want our guests, including you, we want our family members to fully be present and enjoy the day.
Yeah.
And for that reason, we are taking the responsibility off of your shoulders.
There you go.
So you can present it in a way where it's like, we are doing this for you.
Yeah.
Because we want you to have such a damn good time that we are taking control, and hire a planner. If you don't already have one, get one.
Yeah.
Who can take over all of that stuff.
And they can be the bad guy.
And they can be the bad guy and tell your future mother-in-law to fuck off.
Yeah.
As bad as you want to, that's not the best answer, but somebody else can do it for you.
Agreed. And let's talk about, you had mentioned, hey, like your husband's on your side, because that's not always the case.
Nope.
And I will tell you, this maybe is a hot take, and I understand I take things to the nth degree in terms of like cutting out. But if you have a boyfriend, let's start it at boyfriend.
Yep.
Who is a complete, I'm going to say mama's boy, not even mama's boy, just parents, like their parents are rude, but they're like, that's just their personality, or like their parents are mean to you and they give them excuses and give them outs. Run. It is not going to get any better. It will literally get worse. You get married, you have kids, like they will
You're stuck.
continuously pick their parents' side all the time. And that is something, I'm not saying that your partner needs to be mean to their parents, but there needs to be boundaries and they need to be able to speak up for you.
Yep.
Because a lot of the times parents don't care what a significant other might have to say. I mean, if the parents are insane,
Right.
but if they hear it straight from their, son or daughter, then they might be like, okay, I need to calm down or whatever.
Right.
I'm clearly impacting the person that I love the most. But when I hear stuff like that, it just makes me go like, how did we get to this point?
Yep.
Because clearly you had to have seen this before. Now I'll say, and I shared this on last episode, the first time I met my ex's mom, she flicked me in the fucking forehead,
Yeah, which is insane.
told me my tattoos are stupid, and I still stayed with that man for 6 years.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And when I tell you that it was painful with his mom the entire time, that did not
it's not going to get better.
It's not going to get better. So it's just one of those things where you go, I gotta go.
Yep.
I gotta go. But
anyway, you're
I'd
not
love
the
to
asshole.
hear. I'll keep an eye on that and follow along.
Yep.
Okay. Story number 2. Okay, so hot take, reasons you'd never recommend a photographer or videographer again. So I am a wedding photographer and I recently saw a thread post and the question of topic was vendors, what are reasons you would never recommend a certain photographer or videographer again? A planner went on there and listed a bunch of things, but one thing that stuck out to me was why they would never hire a photographer again if it took them a certain amount of time that they did not like to get the full album back. What was noted for publishing purposes what was noted was for publishing purposes specifically for this planner. So the planner wants to get it back as soon as possible in order to submit it for publishing.
Or if there's a deadline, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
for
which
publishing.
does
so
happen.
getting the gallery back before the publishing deadline.
Yeah. My hot take is that I find it ridiculous that other vendors are upset about the time it takes to get footage back when in reality, no one is truly owed these images except for the couple. Personally, I love sending galleries and any video footage to all vendors. However, if there's a mindset from the planners that they would not hire or refer a photographer who they may have otherwise loved during post-wedding but only didn't like their turnaround time, I see that as a huge red flag. Also, unless it's past the contracted date, I don't understand the issue with this. Photographers are people too and have lives. Most of us are women who are also getting married and growing families, hence why some turnaround times might be on the longer side of the contracted time than a photographer who isn't going through those big life events. In all, it always depends on the specific vendor, but I find it shitty to not refer a photographer or videographer if their communicated turnaround time isn't to the planner's standard. Number 1, I have a hot take just on that last paragraph because all in all, absolutely agree. But at the end where it says like, hey, some of us are going through life events, so it might take past the contracted time.
Does it say that?
Hence why some turnaround times might be on the longer side of the contracted time. So maybe it says like if you say 6 to 8 weeks and it's more like 8 weeks, totally understandable. My big thing, don't be late on your contracted times. Otherwise, just give yourself more time. Put it in your package or end in your contract that it's going to take longer. But I do agree that if you're a planner and you're like, well, I'm never going to refer that, photographer again because they got it to me in 6 weeks instead of 4 weeks and I missed the publishing deadline. Did you talk to them about that? Did you ask them about it in advance?
My guess is yes, but even so, if this is a styled shoot, it's totally different. But if this is somebody's wedding that a couple hired a photographer for and the planner is going balls to the walls, I get it. You're doing everything for this couple and you're just putting your whole fucking butt into it.
Yeah.
Everything, you're pulling out all the stops and you want this published. At the end of the day, it is not the photographer who was hired by the couple's responsibility to to work overtime essentially, unless you pay them, unless you as the planner go to them and say, hey, I would really love to get this published. can I pay you extra
Yeah.
to have this gallery back by this specific date, which is the deadline for the magazine
Yeah.
publishing deadline, submission
And it
date?
doesn't even have to be the full gallery. You could be like,
No, you can
yo, in
handpick
this,
60
yeah,
pics.
in the sneak peeks, can you go ham on the detail photos so I can submit them? Like, have that conversation, I think is reasonable, but these galleries take time. Like, they
Especially if
take
it's one that
time.
somebody wants to have published. Like
Yeah.
that's telling me that you had a wedding that was extravagant and beautiful and something that took a lot of, time.
Yeah.
And so on the back end of that, it's going to take a lot of time to edit this gallery, especially if a photographer is there for 10 hours on your wedding day, capturing all of the details,
Yeah.
capturing all of the ins and outs, photographing your day in a way that tells a story, which not everybody does, but if that's what the couple hired the photographer to do, then it's going to take time. And it is not like this person saying, like, it is not up to you to have this personal preference or personal standard of, I need these photos back by this date. You didn't hire them.
Yeah. Now, you said something that I want to call out that I liked: styled shoots.
Yep.
A little different.
Yep.
If a planner is bringing on a photographer for a styled shoot and they're like,
Entirely
yeah, and
different.
they're like, hey, number one, it's a much smaller feat than a
Mhm.
10-hour wedding day, but it's like, hey, there's an agreement of when this will be delivered, because most likely, if it's like a higher end styled shoot, the point is to publish.
Right.
The point is, so it's like you have to get those back. And I, have planner friends who have had styled shoots and never gotten a full gallery from a photographer. And they're just like, what the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
are you kidding me? They got the sneak peek gallery and then that photographer never followed up. And I sit there, and those are the moments where I go, hey, as a photographer, you had a prime opportunity to build a relationship with a planner, and you're fucking, like, you were literally handed the opportunity on a platter, and you're messing that up on your own. But full wedding days, I already sit there and I him and ha about like, oh, how could I do this better for my planners? But I'm never sitting there like, I need to get this to the planner within the next 2 weeks.
No.
No. And you made a good point. I've had a planner do this where they could chip in on the compensation if
Pay
they
me
want certain
extra.
things. I had a planner say, look, the couple doesn't think they need extra time. I know they need extra time. Plus, like, they wanted extra time for the details. They were going ham on the details, and the planner really wanted a lot of photographs of them. So they were like, I will pay you to come extra and have more buffer time so you can focus on reception shots before you have to go to everything else. And I was like, great, no problem.
Yeah.
Send an invoice over. And in that way, I look at it and I go, that planner knew the benefit of what they were asking for. They knew it was worth the money. They did not just have the expectation that I was going to
No.
spend an extra 2 hours there for
them, for nothing.
for them. Yeah.
Like,
I just saw something on the internet. I say Instagram and TikTok, even though I'm not on TikTok, but I saw something that said, sorry, I can't work for free today to help you make money.
yeah.
Like,
No.
if this is I love service exchanges where it's like, hey, I'll do your extensions in your color and cut that would be worth $1,000 if you do, an engagement session for me that would be worth $1,000. Like, I can appreciate that. But the things where people are asking you to do something that is going to help them make money, but they're hoping that you'll do it for free, it's kind of like, please stop asking
No,
that shit.
literally, a friend of mine, she was like, yeah, my other friend, who I don't know that well, might reach out for photographs. And then yesterday in the car ride home, I was thinking like, oh, your friend is literally in, beauty school, esthetician school right now. I was like, hey, if she
Hell
wants a
yeah.
service exchange, she can wax me from head to toe.
Yeah.
She can do my brows. She can give me facials. Like, I'm down. I love a service exchange because I love a service.
I
I
never
love a
I never do
service.
them, and I wish that I could get into it. I think for me though, it's
I
because
love a
I don't
service.
do branding photos a lot of times. So it's like,
Yeah.
what am I gonna say? Yeah, sure, you can have an
This is for
$8,000
family,
wedding
though.
package for you. Yeah, I don't like
And
doing
not a
family.
wedding. You don't.
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying is that's all I photograph
Yeah.
really. So it's hard for me
Yeah,
to
that's
do a
true.
service exchange.
I love it because I'm like, get this face right. Do it up. My friend was dying because I was like, she can wax me up.
Right. My question is, when you do service exchanges, and I know it's not always the same, but is it like you pick something that is the exact dollar amount, or does someone come out ahead? Like, would it make more sense for the photographer to come out ahead versus like,
I'm not picky. I'm not going to lie to
yeah,
you. I am not the type of person who's
to
like,
like nickel and
I need
dime?
to, yeah, I'm not that person. I don't sit down and like write it out. I'm
Yeah,
like, hey, I really want this surface done
yeah,
and I want 6 rounds of it and I need it. So I'll do these photos
yeah,
and you can do that.
yeah. I like that though.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm offering.
Here's what I'm offering.
I feel like that was a pretty concise show. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with us. Not like I want these to be short, but it's a Monday morning. So, anyways, thank you so much for joining Cocktail. Don't forget to subscribe and review the pod wherever you listen. We are on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.
And make sure you're tuning into our Wednesday weekday hump day episodes. And also follow along with us on Instagram at cocktailhour.podcast and submit all of your stories. The link is in our bio and everything is absolutely anonymous, so nobody will know it's you.
Agreed. You know, we are supportive girlies, so I'm having a stroke over here. We're supportive girlies. So if we talked about anything on this pod today, given how nice and quick it was, we'll make sure to link it in the show notes. Other than that, you guys have a great rest of your weekend.
Bye.